Hello, welcome back. We finally got my year-end best books wrap up out a month and a half later than I would have wanted to. But we just had a lot to figure out. We had some technical difficulties, but it's finally out. And now that that's out of the way, we can do things that are a little more short and sweet. So today, I just want to do a January wrap up, and it's my first monthly wrap up. And what a month it was. Oh my gosh. I had such an up and down reading month. It's insane. I read 15 books. I'm including the last two, even though technically I finished the both of them on February 1st, which is my birthday, by the way, Aquarius. But I finished both of them on February 1st only because I didn't have time to complete like the last teeny tiny little bit on January 31st. So I'm counting both of them in this video, and that makes it 15 books that I have to talk about. Look, we're starting this year off with a doozy of a book, okay? I have heard people talk about this book. I've seen it in other people's videos. I even saw recently, as I'm preparing for my Goodreads wrap-up video, that it was nominated for the horror category. And I hated this book. I gave it 2 stars. I was promised a easy to read horror thriller book about religious trauma and being the black sheep of your family. And instead, what I got was weird Satan fan fiction. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it was Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. Look, it's very hard to give a synopsis without spoiling it because we get kind of a big reveal right off the bat. So the only tiny thing I can say that without spoilers is that it is a woman who is estranged from her family because she does not ascribe to the religious beliefs that they have. That's pretty much all I can say. If you want to hear spoilers, keep listening. If you want to skip, just go to the next thing. So we start out with this main character, and she gets invited back to a wedding at her mother's like manor or something. I don't know. She's like a horror movie actress, and she gets invited back and is surprised because she's basically been excommunicated because she has left their faith, right? But she decides that she's going to go because it is her cousin that is marrying the guy that she was like in love with as a teenager and wanted to run away with. And he ended up staying there. She goes home, and it is quickly revealed, despite the religious undertones, that their religion is not worshiping Allah or God or Jesus or any other mainstream God you could think of. They worship Satan. But right off the bat, it does not work for anybody who's actually familiar with like religious theology or ideology at all. Because it is essentially, the way that what I gleaned from it is essentially Catholicism, but you just like put Satan there instead. And you have scriptures? What scriptures? Where do they come from? You have religious dogma and stuff that is never explained where it came from or how this all came about, because it is really just Catholicism. So not only do they worship Satan, okay, then it is revealed that she is Satan's offspring. She is Satan's daughter. And that's why he was always absent and all this stuff. And the whole reveal, it's so obvious. But the whole time I was like, please, this cannot be where this is going. Please, I'm begging. But lo and behold, we get Satan's daughter. Okay. And then he shows up to the wedding, and it's all this stuff, right? After some drama ensues, the main character leaves, and Satan comes after her, basically, to bring her back. And she is able to basically enact violence upon people without actually touching them. At a few different points during the novel, we see her kind of having a confrontation with somebody, and then something really violent happens to them, even though she didn't physically put her hands on them. And Satan comes to get her and is like, oh, that happens to me too. I have all these violent fantasies and I love that you have all these violent thoughts. And I'm gonna force you right now in this like alleyway or something to do something really violent to this man to like show your power or something, okay? Literally, so that happens. And then right after that, he gets in the car and he goes on a tirade about how global warming is bad and millionaires are bad and humans are just mean to each other and they're ruining the earth. And I'm like, hold on, what? He's Satan. He was just talking about loving violence. And now he's complaining about things that are in and of themselves acts of violence. And like, why are we fangirling over, why is Satan like a proponent of being environmentally conscious in this book? Very weird. Did not like. I was so confused. I don't know how anybody could vote this to be the best book of the horror genre for the entire year. I hated it. I really hated it. The second book that I read is actually the second book in the series of Miss Morton mysteries, which are just kind of like cozy little like Regency era mysteries, which I really love. That's like a guilty pleasure of mine, is just that genre. So this was the second book. It's called Miss Morton and the, I'm just gonna read it because it's a long thing. Miss Morton and the Spirits of the Underworld by Catherine Lloyd. This one was good. I didn't like it as much as the first one. In the first one, the main character, Miss Morton, we get a lot more of like her backstory and stuff. In the second one, we got these tiny promises of learning more about that backstory, but it never really came to fruition in this book. So it still feels almost like a cliffhanger and like I'm waiting for the next one, which the next one does come out this year. It's still like just a cute, short little mystery. It was really easy to read. I do like recommend the series. I just didn't love this one quite as much as the first one. It just felt like in this one, there was really no action until the very, very, very end. Like the whole time that they're solving the mystery, it's really just them like talking to each other about the clues and the suspects and this and that, right? We don't actually get any gripping action until literally like the last 2 chapters. I feel like the hallmark of a good cozy light mystery like this is having events in the book that like hook you into reading the next chapter, and I just wasn't getting that from this one. A series that I think does that really well, that has very similar vibes, is the Jane Austen murder mystery series by Tirzah Price. I'm not sure how to say that. But those ones just do a really good job of making me want to read the next chapter and the next chapter and the next chapter. And Miss Morton was not super successful at doing that this time. So I do still recommend this series, but I would also say maybe if you like this kind of thing, look into the ones by Tirzah Price too. Okay, the next one, I am so happy I finally read this. I should have listened to the hype forever ago, because I've heard a lot of people talk about this book and a lot of people whose recommendations I trust. That is Paradise Rot by Jenny Haval. I'm not sure how to say her last name either. This is a really cool short novel. It's very atmospheric. It's not a very plot-driven book. So if you like short novels about women being weird, this is the book for you. It was the book for me. I read it in one night, and I don't really do that anymore. The plot that we do have is it's really just about a woman who's in college and she needs housing during her time at this college, and she ends up finding a listing for an apartment that she would be sharing with another woman, and it's kind of this slapped together apartment in an old warehouse, and they live there together. And really the story is just her descent into becoming obsessed with this woman that she lives with and kind of falling in love with her, I think you could argue. And at the same time, kind of losing her grip on reality, which is a trope that I love. So you're watching her build a relationship with this woman, but at the same time, these elements of nature start to encroach upon their living space. So she's seeing fungi in the bathroom, and we're getting just very atmospheric descriptions of grass in places there's not supposed to be grass and stuff like that. This book is also known for just like being full of like pee. It is a little, I guess, like grotesque at times, but honestly not that bad compared to other things that I've read. So I highly recommend this book. This is already like one of my favorites this year. Ooh, the next one is tough. It is A Study in Drowning by Ava Reed. I was really excited for this because I heard a lot of people talk about this book. It got pretty popular last year. I don't know if it's just because it was so hyped by other people, but for me personally, it didn't fully live up to what I expected from it. I still really liked it, and I like this author, and I'm excited for the next book she has coming out, but it was not what I expected, I guess, and it was like just a little boring to me. I don't know. It felt really slow, and it felt like just not a lot was happening. There's like this big mystery that they're trying to solve and everything, but not a lot really happens. It felt very low stakes until the end. So the mystery aspect of it was not super engaging to me. I did like the romance. Some people I've seen like kind of didn't feel the chemistry between them. I liked the romance. I thought it was really sweet and cute. The thing that I have to say about the mystery, there was really only one conclusion to draw. So the mystery was not really much of a mystery because I called it from like the middle. Like as soon as we were getting even the tiniest bit of clues, I was like, okay, well, it has to be that. That's like the only explanation. I liked the characters. And like I said, I liked the romance. I thought that the way that the main character, the girl, is struggling with some things that happened to her while she is at this university that's mostly obviously for men at this time and when the book is set. I thought it was really sweet how the boy character that she fell in love with was just so supportive of her as she's like dealing with these things that I don't want to say because I don't want to spoil it. This author writes a lot about sexual assault and trauma and dealing with that in different ways. So that is a big theme during this book. I probably should have said that at the beginning. Yeah, so just be careful with her books, but I like this. I'd still say read this because I like this author's work, and because of those themes, I think she handles those themes really well. I do think her books have a lot of merit because of that, because I think it's hard to do. I just wasn't super impressed by this one. I liked Juniper and Thorn more. The next one that I read, I listened to and had a very pleasant listening experience. And that was The Collected Regrets of Clover by Mickey Brommer. This was on my TBR last year, and I just never got around to reading it. And I finally did after I saw that it was nominated on the Goodreads Awards. So I decided to listen to it. And I had a good time listening to it. It is basically about a woman who is a death doula. So in the same way that there are doulas who help bring life into this world, she is a doula that helps usher people into the afterlife in a respectful and peaceful way. She sits with them, she listens to their stories, she listens to their regrets. She has notebooks about the regrets that she learns from these people, and she basically tries to put back out into the universe something to counteract that regret, right? So one woman really regretted that she didn't eat more oranges during her life. And so Clover decides she's going to eat more oranges, or she eats some oranges or something like that. You know, she's trying to cosmically balance out the regrets of her patients. The only things that bugged me about it were just, it kind of felt like tropes and characters that I had already seen before in other things. The main character is a very quirky loner type woman, very similar to like Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine or The Maid. So because of that, I was just kind of like, okay, I'm kind of tired of this character. Like, can we try to do something a little different? It just feels like a very popular trope in the past few years. Also, she ends up having a relationship with this old woman. That's kind of the major plot of this novel. And the old woman also just it kind of, the dynamic there kind of just reminded me of like the Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and also The Secret Lives of Book People. So again, it's like I'm feeling some recycled ideas here. And maybe Mickey Brommer just wanted to try her hand at these tropes. And I think that that's fine. I think for me, these things are just getting a little old. The thing that I really, really liked about this one though, is I loved the romance in this book because you very quickly in the beginning meet the person that you think that she's going to end up with, and then the course that the novel takes, there's just some twists and turns, and you end up meeting somebody else that she actually ends up with, and it's just a very sweet romance. I really, really loved the romance aspect of this book. That was probably the highlight for me, and I'm not somebody who goes into books like looking for the romance. The next one was a book that I was really excited for because I loved the first one. It's the second Molly the Maid book in the series. So the first one was just called The Maid, I think, and this one was called The Mystery Guest by Nita Prose. These are great little mysteries. They're very short. They're very easy to read. Again, it's kind of like that quirky main character that I feel like we've been seeing a lot of recently, but this is a really, really well done version of that, and I really love this character and the supporting characters. This one is about an author who comes to visit the hotel to make some big secret announcement, and as he gets on the stage to make this announcement, he dies. And it's very dramatic, and we don't know what he was going to say, what was the announcement, and how did he die, and who killed him, because it was a murder now. But the really interesting aspect of this is that Molly the maid, so she's the head maid at this hotel, Molly the maid actually has experiences with this author from when she was a child, because her gran was the cleaner at his mansion when she was a kid. So we're flashing between the present of her trying to figure out this mystery and what happened to him, and we're flashing back to the past of what her experiences were with him when she was a child, which ended up being negative. It also just had a really good twist. I don't want to say what it was because I really encourage people to read this. It's so short. Read it. Read it. Oh my gosh, the next one. Okay, let me see who this was by, so I can never read one of his books again. Okay, this book, I'm just gonna say what it was right away. This book was Murder Your Employer, The McMaster's Guide to Homicide by Rupert Holmes. I'm going to be so real with you. I started the audiobook in December, and I was just slogging through it the entire time. It ended up expiring in my Libby library, and I had to put it on hold to get it back so I could listen to like the last 3 hours. What even was this? I was actually so excited for this because it seems like something that would be right up my alley. It's about a guy who attempts to murder his boss, who's just horrible. And the main character attempts to murder him, fails in the sense that McMaster's, this program that allows you to learn how to kill your boss as like a favor to the world if it's a terrible boss, very easily tracks everything that he did and basically gives him the ultimatum that he can either be like turned over to the police or he can enter their program to actually learn how to kill this guy and not get caught for it. So we follow this main character as well as two other characters, a woman and another woman, and their journeys and reasons for wanting to kill their bosses. Okay? It sounds like such a good premise, and you have 3 plots going on. So I don't know how this man managed to make this book so unbelievably boring. It was so long. There were just so many things that could have been cut out of this book, so many tangents that we did not need to go on. And because of that, there were times when I was listening to it that I zoned out and I wasn't paying attention to what was going on. So I had to stop it and go back and re-listen. And usually when I went back, it wasn't even something important anyway. The important things in this book were so spaced out because it was so long. It was not worth my time. Also, it's insane because in the audiobook, Neil Patrick Harris reads one of the perspectives in this book, and I just want to know why. Does he like know the author, or like is he gonna be in the movie adaptation or something like that? I don't know, but I don't know why he bothered with it. You don't bother with this book. Skip it. It was not good. Wow, okay, I'm realizing I read a lot of kind of like cozier mysteries this month last month, because the next one that I have to talk about was the first book in the Lily Adler mystery series. And the first one is called The Body in the Garden by Catherine Shellman. This is a mystery in a Victorian setting with the main character being widow Lily Adler, who comes back to London after her husband passes away and is trying to kind of re-enter into society as a grieving widow. She goes to a party that's hosted by her friend that she knows in London, and she hears a murder. So she's out in the garden and she hears two men arguing, and basically by the end of it, one of them ends up dead. She ends up teaming up with this young woman who has connections to the guy who died, as well as a friend of her late husband's. And they make this little team and they're trying to solve this mystery. I wanted to like this really, really bad because this is exactly the kind of thing that I usually like. And there's quite a few of these books, I think, at this point. I think there's like at least 4. So I was really hoping that this could just be my next series to binge, but it was too long. It was so long. And it was just so much of them, again, like talking. Like I didn't feel like there was just a lot happening. There wasn't a lot of action. It was, again, them talking about the clues and the suspects and the mystery. But then the actual plot was progressing so slowly. The thing is, I never skim books. If I'm not going to just DNF it, I do actually faithfully read it until the end. But this was the one book in the past like 6 months that a good portion of it towards the end, I actually just ended up skimming it because there was just so much extra material that could have been cut down for a more engaging book. So I'm actually not going to continue the series. I'm kind of sad about it. And who knows, maybe if I run out of books similar to this, maybe I will pick it back up. But this one just seems like it's not really for me. Maybe I should listen to it because I feel like that would be better for me. So maybe I take that back. Maybe I will continue the series. I don't know. Okay, the next one I don't want to talk too much about. It is Yellowface by R.F. Kuang, which I am reading for my video about all of the Goodreads winners. So I don't want to say too much here about it. I will say I liked it more than I expected to like it. I was purposefully avoiding this book because I watched Cindy's video about it, and she had a lot of really valid qualms with the story and with everything surrounding the story, really. I'll link her video down there, even though like she doesn't need me to, but I'll link the video down there because I'm really not qualified to talk about the issues with it, but she definitely is. But I guess I've never read anything by R.F. Kuang, and I ended up liking her writing a lot more than I thought I was going to. So I felt kind of pleasantly surprised by this book, despite some of the other misgivings that I've heard about it. And I felt like it was a really realistic picture of how I feel like I could see something like this playing out exactly this way online. I'm sure I'm like one of the last people to read this, so it's not like I can really recommend it or anything, but I will be talking more about this one in my upcoming video whenever I manage to finish all of the winners. Okay, on that same train of thought, the next one is Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. Okay, I can't believe I had to read this book. I like, it's for a video, so like I did it and I listened to it, but I could have spent my whole life and I would have been A-okay. I cannot believe that this book is as popular as it is. And I don't want to say too much more than that because I will be talking about it again, like I said before. But please, since this is a January wrap up, I guess I will say, can we just try? Can we please try to just have a little bit of a higher standard for 2024? I am gonna listen to the second one though, because even people who liked the first one have complained about the second one, so I am very curious to know why that is. Okay, the next one is a positive one. It is Eileen by Otessa Moshfegh. I do not know if I'm saying that right. I really like this, and I'm really happy about that because I really hated my year of rest and relaxation. Personally, not for me. The main character was too unlikable for me, but this one like just barely made it, and I ended up really, really liking this book. It's just disclaimer though, it's like one of those like very like weird female character, weird book, weird female character does weird things. So if you don't like that, you're probably not gonna like this. I love that. I eat it up. Not to say that I liked Eileen. Obviously, there's not really anything to like about her, but just the way that she fit into the story and the plot made it something that I enjoyed. It's basically just about a very weird girl who is embroiled in her relationship with her abusive father and has to take care of him. At the same time, she works at a boys' penitentiary, like a jail for underage boys. And she becomes super obsessed with a new employee at the prison named Rebecca. And it's just about her really trying to ingratiate herself with Rebecca, gain her friendship and her attention, and how that kind of ends up going really south for her because Rebecca gets her involved in something pretty crazy. It was very weird, disgusting at times. Eileen has some very weird tendencies and proclivities, but if you are up for that kind of content, this I would really, really recommend this. It has a great twist. Me and my partner tried to watch the movie just recently, and it's basically just like a nepotism project. It does not stay true to the book. Cannot recommend the movie at all, but definitely would recommend the book. The next one is another Goodreads winner, so I'm not going to say too much, but it was Happy Place by Emily Henry. I kind of have to eat my words a little bit about this one because I always say I'm not a romance girly. And that is true. I'm just not. It's not a genre that I enjoy because romance is not interesting enough to me to read an entire book about it. I have to have also like a main plot or an adjacent plot. However, I was really pleasantly surprised by this book. I was engaged with it. I was invested in these characters, and I ultimately had a kind of a great time listening to this. It definitely makes me kind of want to read her other books, and potentially like if she has more things coming out in the future, I do think that I'll pick them up now, and I wouldn't have before reading this. I had a couple qualms, but they're things that I've heard other people say, and so I'm just going to save them for my upcoming video. But yeah, I think Emily Henry is potentially an author that I'm adding to my radar. I think I'm going to keep an eye on that. The next one I read was a book that I've heard a lot of people talk about and rave about really and rate very highly. And that was Bright Young Women by Jessica Knoll. I listened to this book. It had me very, very interested right off the bat. It is about this woman years after she is part of this massacre that occurred in a sorority house. She was there. She was part of the sorority. She saw the person who did it, but she herself was not a victim. It's really about the women who are affected by serial killers. There's a lot of thoughts about serial killers and the way serial killers are glamorized and true crime is glamorized, and how so often we know the names of these men who committed these horrible actions because of the way they're portrayed in the media. But a lot of us can't name any of their victims a lot of the times. It has like a split timeline because we're getting the timeline of her when she was young and after this happened and like what happened following this. But then we're also flashing forward to her years and years later when there is some new uncovered evidence or something, and she needs to travel to a place to go obtain that and figure out what it is. It was really cool because in the book, the main character never says the killer's name. He's just like the guy, or there's something to like refer to him. But obviously we hear about like all of these women who were murdered, and it really is about this like survivor kind of finding justice for her friends that were killed. The only reason that it kind of lost me is it's a little long in the sense that it ends up being a lot more technical and like lawyery than you think it's going to be. which makes sense because the main character is like studying for that and her father is a lawyer, I believe. So I understand why it was taken in that direction. It was kind of losing me a little bit just because of that. The kind of sense of anticipation that I think you could have had if it was told differently, you kind of lost because of this, because it was so like technical and you were trying to keep up with like all the technicality of this case versus really feeling like in it, I guess. I don't know. Does that make sense? Kind of. The thing I forgot to mention is there is like another character who is also trying to get justice for her friend because she believes that the killer murdered her as well. And that was a really interesting branch off of the story. We end up flashing back to the character who was murdered, her perspective years prior to the massacre. So I really like that. It was a really well-crafted novel. It knew what it wanted to be and what it wanted to say. I totally get why it's been hyped up. It feels obviously kind of in a similar vein to like Notes on an Execution. So if you like things like that, I would recommend it. Oh, the next one is probably my favorite book that I've read so far this year. And that's A Far Wilder Magic by Allison Saft. Look, I'm very picky about the books that I actually buy to put on a bookshelf or whatever, because I don't like to clutter, you know? But this book I absolutely will be buying. It will be going on my bookshelf. I loved it so much. It was immediately a 5 stars for me. I had a teeny bit of a difficult time getting into it just because like there's actual like lore and world building at the beginning, but once you're in it, you're in it. And this is an example of where world building actually makes sense and the religion makes sense and the magical creatures make sense and are actually pertinent to the story as a whole, unlike a little something called Fourth Wing. This is set in a world where there is alchemy. And the main character is a hunter, and the other main character, who's a dude, is an alchemist. And they're going to enter this competition to kill the last remaining demiurge. And in this world, there's a lot of information about the different religions and the thoughts about the demiurges and what they are and what they could be. So I can't really summarize that here for you, but it is just really, really, really well written and well built. But they're going to enter this competition because they have personal reasons for doing it, to kill this last demiurge. And in the process of being in this competition and everything that goes on, they fall in love in like the cutest, just most adorable romance that I've read in the past few years. I loved the two characters. I loved how they related to each other. I really felt the build of their romance. And once they were together, like it felt so satisfying and natural. But this is also about kind of healing and growing from trauma with like family and familial bonds and potentially like toxic parents. And I think that that's also just a really important conversation that people need to be having. And I thought it was handled really, really well in this book. So yeah, sometime soon, expect that book to be like right there. All right, and then this is the last one that I have to talk about. It's another Goodreads winner, so I'm not even going to say very much, but it was The Woman in Me by Britney Spears. I don't want to critique it as a memoir for this video, so what I will say is I'm so glad that she has gotten the opportunity through this book to tell part of her story. I don't think it was really an all-encompassing version of her story because it was pretty short. It did make me really emotional for her. I think she has an important story to tell, and this was a great platform to be able to talk about that. I would say it is just kind of more a recounting of events versus what I would consider to be a memoir. Memoir is one of my favorite genres. I was in a colloquium in college about memoirs, and it quickly became one of my very, very, very favorite things. So I wasn't super impressed with it as a memoir, but I think it was still really good and really, really heart-wrenching at times, just like what she had to go through. And it's encouraging that she's doing so much better for herself now. I wish it focused a little more on some of those smaller things and smaller moments that were really interesting, because it kind of glossed over things in order to spend more time talking about like her pop culture moments. And I would have liked to hear more of like the behind the scenes stuff, you know, versus like what she thought when she was wearing the snake or whatever. I put it in the same vein as like Jeanette McCurdy's memoir that also was really popular recently. Was that last year? Oh my gosh. Okay. Well, that's it. That was my January. I'm in the middle of February now. I'm kind of late for this. I still have not figured out how I want to kind of finish out these videos, but I guess like if I'm gonna do the YouTube thing, I should say like, you know, like, subscribe if you want to do all that stuff. That'd be cool. I want to figure out ways to like connect with people a little more. So my social medias, the ones that I have made so far, are in the description. Look at those if you want. Send me a message if you want. But yeah, that's it. That's it. Thanks. Bye.